Kia ora. Good morning. Welcome to Connecting the Dots podcast. So today I would like to talk about sleep. I'm watching one of my videos with, the top 100 unsolved mysteries of the mysterical and, the WTHs of YouTube. One of the selections in the category was sleep and not knowing how and why we sleep. And like with the ASMR one, like it kind of baffled me a little, but the guy in the video did say at the end, is there a supernatural explanation? And I thought, yes, this is my cue to make this video because there is a supernatural explanation, which is why science runs into a lot of trouble when they're trying to understand, the human reasoning and behaviors of why we do the things we do and why our bodies react to certain things and stuff like that, because they're linear thinking, they're closed-minded thinking. They don't know how to think outside the box. They only think indoctrinated learning. They take what they're taught and they run with it, and they can't expand their mind outside of what they were taught. And that's really not what science is about, because the whole purpose of science is like trying to find the answers to all the questions that the universe is expecting us to ask. And even if we don't get it right, this time around, at some point we will get it right. At some point we will get it right, because, it's up to anyone who dabbles in the magic arts of science and that to put what they know and what they learn out there, so that future generations, if we can't come up with conclusions and definitive answers, future generations can take our work and, run with it and, finish off the legacy that we left behind. So as someone who dabbles in the magics of science, in order to be an occult scientist, in order to be able to understand and explain the world of the occult and the supernatural to people, which nobody knows anything about, let's be honest, it means that I have to put my fingers in lots of many pies, because the world of the occult and the supernatural is vast and varied as to what those definitions are. It's everything from faith to, evolution, to physics, to astronomy, to, psychology and biology and chemistry and photography. I have to know a little bit about everything, and I'm not claiming to be anything great. I'm uneducated. I got kicked out of school at 14 for being too much trouble. But I've got to be honest and say it's because I was bored. I was being forced to teach things, to learn things that my brain couldn't understand. Like, I can't work numbers the way everybody else can. I kind of have like a maths autism when it comes to numbers. Like, when I see numbers in certain sequences and that, it just turns my brain to mush. And when I was working out quantum magnetics and the ability to manipulate time, I actually found that maths, especially when it came to working with odd numbers, anything that had an odd number in it, completely threw my biorhythmics off when it came to trying to navigate my way through time portals and time codes and binary codes, left in frequencies out in the universe. And so, I had to learn everything completely with the guidance of my gods, my ancestors, my instincts and my intuition. Being an autodidact, everything I know, other than when I was learning to be an esthetician, a beauty therapist, like, I'm all self-taught. And it's only, by the grace of God that we have the internet now that I'm able to further expand my works and my theories and, my studies and my research in that, because, back in the day you used to have to go to the library and those books were full of things that were not even going to be able to begin to start to explain the field of science I was walking into as a child. So when he said they don't know how sleep works and why it works and blah, 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 and could it be supernatural, I knew that this was the perfect opportunity for me to explain it. I have briefly touched on this before in a video about why we have sleepwalking, why we sleepwalk and have sleep paralysis, and why we have like sudden infant death syndrome and sudden adult death syndrome, SIDS and SADS. So hopefully this can explain a little bit more. And yeah, so why we sleep. So basically we have what's called the circadian rhythm, and the circadian rhythm controls like how alert you are, how sleepy you are, your body temperature and your appetite. It's basically like the body's internal clock. It's designed to run naturally in conjunction with like the 24-hour cycle, the night-day cycle, when it's light, when it's dark, when it's light, when it's dark. The circadian rhythm works alongside the sun, and when there is more sun, we are alert, we are ready, we are active, we produce less melatonin in the brain. As it's getting darker, we start to produce more melatonin in the brain, which starts making us sleepy. Now, the circadian rhythm runs on environmental cues like light, having a full tummy, how much exercise you've had, and how warm your body is, because your circadian rhythm controls body temperature. All kinds of organisms rely on the sleep-wake cycle, like flowers, bears, nocturnal animals, because, you know, there's less predators at night. Most predatory animals sleep during the day, sleep at night and are active during the day. So through the course of evolution, a lot of animals realize that if they sleep during the day and are awake at night, their chances of being caught by predators, you know, decreases exponentially. So they, through the course of their evolution, became nocturnal. With humans, the circadian rhythm regulates coordination between the mind and the body. The digestive system and endocrine system regulates protein and hormones that align with the amount of energy that the body uses. The SNP, or suprachiasmatic nucleus, is in the hypothalamus, and it sends signals throughout the day to regulate activity in the body. It's highly sensitive to light, which is an important cue for the circadian rhythm to send the body to sleep at night. So the darker it gets, the more melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, is produced in order to send the body to sleep. Now, melatonin, and this is important to know, is a hormone that is produced by the pineal gland. Now, the reason why this is important to know is because the pineal gland is your third eye. And I have always maintained from day one, because, you know, my ancestors have been teaching this for centuries, the reason why we sleep isn't because it's important to rest the body, because what we know is that when we sleep, the brain is more active, that the brain is busy remembering everything it saw during the day. Like, for example, children are more likely to dream about things they experienced during the day than adults. And when we sleep, our body goes into like hibernation. It goes into like a hibernation status. We go through like a little mini death in order for our soul, our spirit, our consciousness to leave our body. We don't sleep to rest our body and rest our brain. We go to sleep so that our soul can rest. So while our brain is busy remembering everything it did during the day and allowing all the chemicals in our body to produce the proteins that we need, and, you know, to regulate our digestive system and our hormones and deal with our emotions, and that, it sends us off to sleep and gives us these dreams to, which I always say is a form of self-psychoanalysis, 99% of our dreams are there to tell us what we're thinking and feeling, issues that we need to be addressing, things we're not looking at, things we're ignoring, childhood traumas and past life wounds that need to be healed and fixed. And, that is 90% of our dreams. That's why we dream. They're a form of self-review. And then some of it can be predictory, some of it is deja vu, which is like a sleeping form of time jumping, where you will live the future before you've had the experience. Deja vu is when you will dream about something that's going to happen. It is usually mundane things, but because all time exists at once, that's stronger when we go to sleep. So while we're sleeping, we will have deja vu experiences where you are living the future before you've experienced it physically, because you're living it in the atomic frequency first. And then you have to wait, because I always say you got to wait for existence to catch up with reality, because gravity and magnetism play a big role in how time functions and correlates between what we see in our mind and what we experience physically. So what we see with our conscious mind is regulated by existence, and what we experience in reality, in real life, in the physical 3D, is regulated by, our physical body, our physical time, the circadian rhythm. And so what happens is, we are then, when the melatonin is ramped up, our body starts feeling the forces of gravity and magnetism, because the moon is up, and the moon is the Mac Daddy of magnetism, and he controls gravity because, as we know, he keeps the earth spinning and keeps it in place. And, he controls the ebbs and flows of the tides and water and, the, nocturnal activity and all that sort of thing. So when the melatonin ramps up, as the moon's coming up, and being the Mac Daddy of gravity and magnetism, we're pulled down because we are in the physical body. Our body starts to become heavier, which then is physically exhausting on the brain, because remember, the circadian rhythm gets its cues from how much activity the body has. And when the melatonin and the moon, gravity and magnetism, start telling the body, oh, you've had a hard day, you need to go to sleep, the body can't fight it, because it's almost impossible to fight the natural forces of gravity and magnetism on a vessel that is made up of just a pile of cells and atoms and organisms. Even flowers can't fight gravity and magnetism. Like, they have to open their flowers and that, like, they have to bloom in that during certain cycles and certain parts of the day and that, because even flowers can't fight the forces of gravity and magnetism, because the circadian rhythm, and if you look at it in the word circadian rhythm, the word rhythm, as in biorhythmics, when you look at the rhythm of how, you look at, if you imagine the Earth in the middle, the sun on one side, the moon on the other, and it goes up, down, like a pulley system. That's the rhythm, that's the circadian rhythm, and it goes up and down and around, up and down and around, and it moves around just like a clock. So the sun and the moon would be Earth's body clock, like internal clock, and they control how much light you get, how much melatonin the brain is producing, and how much gravity and magnetism is felt within the force fields of the body. Because also as well, the circadian rhythm is also responsible for being able to identify when it is time to go to bed. Now, the trouble is that a lot of because the circadian rhythm and even melatonin, the pineal gland hormone, are responsible for your mental well-being, which is, if you look at your psychological mind, is broke up into two parts, the left brain and the right brain. The pineal gland sits in the middle, and the left brain would be your psychological mind. Your right brain would be your psychic mind or your conscious mind. So you would have your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is controlled by your pineal gland, and how strong the signal is as to how intuitive you are It controls instincts. So, you know, the circadian rhythm with the nocturnal animals needing to watch out for prey and all that sort of thing. And when we go to sleep, our conscious mind goes off to be with all our deceased loved ones, to exist in the creation of all time itself, which is why we can have things like deja vu and predict the future through our dreams and that, because time exists all at once. In the realms of the conscious state of mind, the conscious mind doesn't need a physical body, but because we are still evolving, we need a physical body until we can evolve past the need for a physical body. But until that point comes, we need to be able to have our physical vessels, because we are still evolving, you know, organisms. We're still evolving physically, we're still evolving spiritually. The fact that scientists don't even know why we sleep in that, like, we've got a long way to go, but before we can evolve past the need for a physical body. But until then, because we are, you have to remember that we are consciousness first. We are atoms first. We are atoms out in the atmosphere. We are atoms that float about the universe before we are physical bodies. So the thought body, or the conscious body, has to come down into a physical vessel in order to be able to live the human experience. And the human experience, as I keep saying in my podcast, and that is the most exhausting, traumatic experience a soul can exist in, but we choose to do it because it's also the most educational, and it's the one that's going to evolve us faster. So then when we go to sleep, our conscious mind goes off and, you know, lives out all time, past, present, and future, whoever you were in your past lives, whoever you're going to be in the future, all your deceased loved ones from this life and all the ones before. You know, you get to go back home, basically, which is why I think this concept of ET go home, you know, like when our body sleeps, our conscious mind gets to go home, and home to us is, you know, the great expanding universe, because that's where everything exists. Thought, invention, creation, you know, everything exists out in the universe, because the universe is basically just like a giant, big, evolving, throbbing brain made up of, you know, nuclei and atoms and all that, that hold and retain the knowledge of everything in the universe that has happened, is happening, and will happen. So it's only us that has had to contain it all, because all of that knowledge has to be retained within basically like a primitive vessel, which is the human body. So this is why creative empaths, who are the highest functioning form of creative mind in the universe, well, not in the universe, because we've got ones out there that are way smarter than us. Sorry, on Earth, the creative empath are the highest functioning kind of brain. And this is why they will have a lot of trouble sleeping at night, because their brain is just as active during the day as it is at night, because they are already tuned in to that frequency that the average person needs to go to sleep in order to tune into. That is why creative empaths will do their best work at night. You'll see writers and artists and musicians and scientists and mathematicians and engineers and inventors and designers, and they're up till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning working on their pet project, because their brain is more active, and it's harder for them to go to sleep at night because of the fact that they're already maintaining that high level of frequency that the average person needs to go to sleep in order to experience. So another cause, which I keep saying over and over again, is a real problem for people, is the fact that the circadian rhythm is controlled by light. The LSD light from our phones and TVs and consoles trick the brain into thinking that it's daylight. So when you have TVs going, like when you put TVs on for your kids, and I used to do it with my kids as well, one of them, my eldest boy, regulates his sleep fine. My youngest boy, you know, God, he's so smart. My eldest boy will stay up, later than the average 14-year-old, but he knows, well, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep. Whereas my youngest, he can't shut his brain down because he's so smart. Like he teaches me. But like, I understand it's because he's a high functioning genius. So I understand that he's working on the realms of, I mean, this kid was walking and talking at 6-7 months old. So I knew from a young age that my kids were smart. My firstborn, when I had my first sonogram, turned and waved at 7 weeks old, like completely stunned all the nurses, because he turned towards the camera and literally waved when I was 7 weeks pregnant. And the nurses were freaking out and ran and told the doctor, and they were like, said to the doctors and nurses, "This baby, I swear to you, he just waved." The nurse actually said, "Did he just do what I think he just did?" And she actually took a photo of him when he's 7 weeks in my tummy, and you actually see him with his hand raised. So like I immediately started reading to my belly and teaching my kids, like as soon as they were born, numbers and colors and that sort of thing, because I knew that they were going to be smart. But LSD lights trick your brain into thinking that it's sunlight. So if you do have trouble sleeping, the best thing to do is, if you can't go to sleep in the quiet, because I know a lot of people have trouble sleeping when it's really quiet, but that's okay, because you need to understand that goes back to when we were nocturnal animals. Like at nighttime, we had to be alert to listen out for the sounds of, predators and that, which is where pareidolia also comes from, because when we were nocturnal animals, we had to look for cues to see if we could see predators hiding in amongst the flora and fauna of the jungles and deserts and that sort of thing in the landscapes, to keep an eye out for predators. So we had to look for faces, and so our brain, as we evolved, triggered the need to look for facial recognition inside patterns, which often now people think are ghost images. Like they'll see, I saw a face in the curtain, I saw a face in the wall, blah blah blah, when it's actually just pareidolia, which is an instinctual reaction that we have retained as we've evolved, in order to be alert for looking for the friend or foe response. Is that a friendly face, or is that a foe? Is that a predator, or is that a protector, sort of thing? Okay, so if you don't like going to sleep in quiet, try and listen to music instead. But you know how your phones, if you have Spotify on your phone, you can download Spotify and listen to music completely free. You don't have to pay for it. The only thing is, you'll get ads every like 3 or 4 songs, and that's completely fine, because you're going to sleep. Download Spotify on your phone, because with Spotify, you don't need to have the light showing on your phone, unlike with YouTube. You know how you have to have, like when you have YouTube on, it doesn't shut the light down, it doesn't put your phone into sleep mode, but Spotify does. So put Spotify on, listen to some nice easy music. I will put a link in the description box below. I did a podcast a few weeks ago about music for the ascending mind, based on your stage of elevation for your ascension, and also your zodiac signs. So I'll put that in. Put these things on your Spotify and lay back and listen to them. And then, because there's no LED light on, your brain will just it reverts back to when we were animals and plants and organisms in the dirt and that sort of thing, and it will lull you to sleep naturally and organically. So I'll put a link in the description box below, and pretty much that's how we sleep and why we sleep. And it is supernatural. It is completely supernatural. It has nothing to do with functioning as a human, and everything to do with functioning as an evolving spiritual being. It is gathering all the intel and information that our soul needs to make us stronger, greater, atoms when we rejoin the frequency of the atomic frequency out in the universe. Because you have to remember as well that when we're out in the universe, that's where the Akashic records are. And so we have access to that library when we go to sleep. We can do all the things that we need to do in order to help us evolve down here on earth. Like we all wake up in the morning with bursts of inspiration. We all wake up in the morning with a new plan, a new idea, a new direction, feeling happier, feeling healthier, feeling more determined, feeling more driven. And that's because while we were asleep, our soul or our consciousness went back out into the atomic frequency and went into the library of the Akashic records, and sat with the gods of learning and knowledge and wisdom. And when it woke up, it brought it back to us and said, right, this is the next thing I need to do in order to evolve you as a human, so it evolves me as a spiritual consciousness or soul. And that's that explained in a nutshell, basically. So I'll put links in the description box below. I hope that helped. I will put the link in for the podcast that I did. Well, it wasn't. It was one of my. It was one of my tests back in the day, back in 2019, when I was learning, as I was losing weight, teaching myself how to talk in front of the camera, because I was getting ready. I was getting ready. Sorry, to want to do these podcasts and shows back then, but of course all the hoo-ha happened, and I had to stop for a bit and kind of regather myself and figure out my path, and went through my ascension and all that sort of stuff. But I'm here now. So when you see the older videos, and that, they were my test runs as I was losing weight, as I was forcing myself to talk in front of the camera, trying to figure out how I was going to present myself. I was taking like etiquette classes and that sort of thing. If you saw some of my older videos, oh my lord, like the language that I used in there, it was just so uncouth. It's so unladylike, I'm telling you now. So, but I'll put links in for those videos, and the one for the music that you can listen to, or the sounds that you can listen to on your Spotify. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. And just remember, if I can tell you one thing, you need to understand how important the pineal gland is. My Egyptian ancestors understood how important the pineal gland is. It is the third eye, the eye of Horus. That is the pineal gland. If you slice the brain, it looks exactly like the Egyptian eye, the all-seeing eye. You need to decalcify it in order for it to be able to run at its primary function, at its perfect state. You need to decalcify it. And in order to decalcify it, guys, you need to keep away from chemicals, exposure to chemicals. So things like fluoride and artificial sweeteners will kill your brain faster than like smoking cigarettes in that world, to be honest. You can smoke for decades and be fine with it, but if you take a big hit of fluoride or these artificial sweeteners, I mean they've been able to prove now that some of these, it was the acesulfame K, are carcinogenic. So keep away from sugars. Just keep away from sugar. But if you can't get yourself off the addiction of sugar, at least keep away from artificial sugar and things like fluoride as well. And aluminium, or aluminum as they call it in America, like your deodorants and air fresheners. Keep away from anything that is stored or is sprayed out of a can, because you breathe all of that in, and like it gives you all sorts of brain issues, memory issues, dementia, Parkinson's, and even things like lymphatic and breast cancer and lung cancer and stuff like that. So I'm determined to get people as fit and strong, as healthy as possible, because I'm trying to help evolve us to the point where eventually, at some point in the future and many generations to come, we won't need a physical vessel. And then when you're all out in the great beyond, delving into the Akashic records, and you see this podcast somewhere in the library, you'll be able to go, she was on to something then, just like Nikola Tesla. And they always say Nikola Tesla, but I can't call him anything but Nikola Tesla. Like Nikola Tesla and all that. Like, that's what he meant. That's what they were talking about. Like, now we understand where they were going with that line of theory and, that sort of thing. So, with any luck, you say, God, when she was thinking about all that stuff, she still needed arms and legs. And her legs. Arms and legs. I was going to say arms and a leg. Well, there are some people out there born with arms and a leg. I mean, you are whatever God created you to be. You're perfect anyway. So I'm putting it out there. Enjoy the video. Have a beautiful day. Ka kite anō. Mwah.